Hello and welcome to WatchMeFly. Today we're going to walk through the event registration system and show you how to set up your event registration form, how pilots will fill those forms out, and then I'll show you some of the management tools that you have available to you to look after and manage those registrations. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm here in the competition center in the dashboard for the 2023 Pacific Cup event, which is a fake event that I've created for this purpose. So the first thing you're going to do is come up to Pilots and Registration Management. Because this is the first time I've filled out or have come into this section, it will take me straight into the registration form setup page. And this is where you can set up your form. So here you can see that we've got a whole lot of places where you can add content. So we've got things like headers, and we have different sections with lots of questions. So pilot information section, the balloon information section, insurance section, one called other information where you can add custom questions and sections that you want, and then finally the pilot agreement section. And we're going to work our way through this now. All right, so starting at the top, what we're going to do is first add a bit of content for the top of our form. So I'm just going to paste some dummy text in here. But what this gives you the ability to do is do a bit of formatting. So we might decide we want that to be bold. You can add links, you can italicize text. All of that's available to you. Now my recommendation is as you go down the form, just keep hitting the save button, because that just means that you're going to be saving the content and you're not going to lose anything for whatever reason. Now we're coming down to the pilot information section. Again, you can add some text in here if you want, some heading text for that section. I'm not going to do that though. But what we're able to do now is look at all the different questions that we want to add or use. So we pre-populate your form with a whole lot of questions that are from the WatchMeFly library. And these are standard questions that most events will use. So it just saves you time having to create them all from scratch. So here we can see we've got a lot of fields about name, email address, license details. But we have a couple of things going on. Firstly, you can decide if you want to use it or not. So here, for example, it says date of birth. I have chosen not to use it by default, but I'm going to choose to use that one. You can also flag whether they're required or not. And what that means is a pilot must fill that field out before they can submit it. What we tend to see is most events will choose not to make them required because they want pilots to be able to submit forms partially filled out and then they can chase the details later, but it's entirely up to you. You can also customize the fields. So for example, if I decide that I'm going to not use the name last name, I want to change it to be surname, I can come in here and give it a custom name and say, might help if I spell it right, surname. What will happen now is when the form is displayed, it will show it as being surname. Okay, so as we walk down here, we can also decide if we want to add extra fields. So what I can do is I can add, I might decide I want to add middle name. I don't know why you would need to capture that, but we can add a middle name. We're going to make it a text field. You have the choice of all sorts of different fields. You can then say where you want it to appear. So we want it to appear after the first name. And then once we've done that, we now have the middle name appearing here, but we're not going to make it a required field. All right, so as we walk our way down, we're able to choose which fields and which ones we don't want to use. I'm going to pretty much keep them all standard. Okay, now what we can do is add any sort of custom fields or sections we want. So let's say we want to ask the pilots if they need any extra crew or if they need any accommodation. So in the other information area, you can come in here and you can add custom fields. So we might just say, do you require any crew? I can say I want that as a yes and no, and I might actually put a question mark. And again, you can choose where you want it to be placed. And we're going to say it's not required. So when I add that, that will then add a question into this section, and that's all looking good, but we're going to make sure we include that. All right, I'm going to add a second question here. This time it's going to be a text one. It's like, do you require accommodation? If so, how many rooms? Okay, this one we're going to leave as text, and I'm going to place it under that there. You're able to then save that. Okay, so we've got a couple of extra questions there. What I can do though is I can also in here, if I wanted to, I can add a new section. So I can call this new section, I can say t-shirts, and I'm going to place a new section here, and then I can ask questions about the t-shirt requirements for pilots. So here we have a new section called t-shirts, and we can move things around. I'm going to remove that because I don't need that in mine. We can delete a section. One thing also worth noting is also the ability to move questions up and down. So I can click on here, so I can put middle name, for example, under last name, or I can move it up again. All very straightforward. Okay, so I'm just going to save and preview this. So this allows you to go and have a look at what your form looks like without having to send it live. So we can see all of our contents here. We can see middle name has been added. It's not a required field. We can scroll down, look at all our fields, and everything's looking exactly as we wished. Okay, now one thing that I'm also going to highlight here is that you'll see that as I'm looking at the form, because I'm logged in as myself, it's actually pre-populated the fields with my information. And that's because I've previously filled out an event registration form and chosen to save my details to WatchMeFly. And we'll show that a little bit in coming up. All right, so let's return back to our setup page. We're all happy with the way the form looks. I'm now going to go back into registration management. Here we can see that it's currently not live, so we haven't published the form to the public yet. And what we're going to do is show you how to do that. So down here at form status, we're able to choose to publish it, and we can decide what dates we want it to be live for. So I want it to be live now, so I'm not going to put a date in for the start date, but I'm going to choose to make it August 31st is when the registration closes, and that will automatically remove the form from the website. If you want to be notified when someone submits a registration form, you can add your email address in here. So I'm going to add my email address here. And if I want more than one person to get an email, we can actually add a comma and then do another email address as well. And that means both people will be notified if someone submits the form. Okay, so I'm now going to hit update, and we'll see now that the form is now live. What we can then do is go and see what it looks like for a user to go and fill out the form. So first I'm going to log in as a different pilot. I'm going to log in as Balloony McBloomface. So Balloony McBloomface has never entered an event on WatchMeFly before. So when he comes in here and goes to the Pacific Cup and goes to the registration form, what he will see is a form that's only got very basic elements filled in for him. So firstly, we can see first name, surname, and email address. And that's pretty much it, and the country. The reason that is because Balloony McBloomface has never saved any of his event registration form information before, and so it's just extracting data from his pilot profile. So the very basic information that WatchMeFly knows. So he's able to go through the form, fill out all the details that he needs to. I'm not going to really bother entering much, but I'm just going to agree to it, and I'm going to save the form. So he can save the form, but when he does that, it still hasn't been submitted to the event. It's just so that he can come back and update details. So he might decide he wants to come in here and upload a file for his pilot license, for example. So he can do that and say, come in and find his pilot license, which is here. And when he uploads that, he can actually choose to save it to his file library. So what I can do is say, save the file and give it a name. So I'll just say pilot license and add the file. So what that does is that attaches it to his registration form when it finishes uploading. and gives it the name, but it also adds it to his own personal WatchMeFly file library, and I'll show you that shortly. So you can continue to fill out all the information. We're going to just give the registration of his balloon that he's flying. Actually, we'll say he's going to fly this one. And that's all the compulsory information. And then if he chooses, he can click on Save Details for Future Use, which means that when he fills out a form for another event in the future, all of the fields that he's filled out will be able to be automatically populated. So once that's all done, he'll hit Submit. That will now submit it. It says that it's been submitted. It will also show what he has put into the form, and so he can't change those details once he's submitted it unless the event will reject it. So let's come back and look at the home page here, because now what you'll see is that Balloony McBloomface has a link to his file library here. It's also available in the drop-down box here. When we go in here, we can see all of the files that he has saved that he wants to use for future use. And he can add extra files in here as well if he chooses. So he might decide he wants to add his certificate of airworthiness. He can just give that a name and add it. And now he's got that in his library to be used in the future. And he can always remove them if he wants. All right, so I'm just going to log out again, and I'm going to log back in as myself, and I'm going to go and enter the event as well. So here you can see that I'm in here. I have a file library full of files because I've filled out the forms for other events before. And I'm going to come into the Pacific Cup, and when I go to register, because I've saved my details, you'll see that all the fields and all the files have already been pre-populated, and I can just go and change the ones that I need as I go through. So because that was done, look how easy it is for me to register. I can just say, yep, I'm happy with that, hit submit, and now that will submit my registration to the event as well. And that's job done. Okay, so now what we're going to do is come in and look in the competition center and see our registrations. So I'm coming back into the Pacific Cup, and I'll go back into Pilot Registration Management. And now we can see the two registrations that are in the system. We've got Balloony McBloomface and we've got my own. What we're able to also see is whether they're a member of WatchMeFly. Currently, the way the form works is you must be a member of WatchMeFly to enter. So they should always be show that they are members. You're able to go and review it. You can flag if they've paid for the event or not, if your event requires a payment. So for example, maybe Balloony McBloomface has paid. You can just hit paid, and that will flag him as having paid. And it'll also show you if the pilot's in the competition pilot list already. So you can see that Andrew or myself is already in the pilot list. But if I want to add Balloony McBloomface to the pilot list, I can simply click on that. I can add them. And then if I come into the pilot management section, you'll see Balloony McBloomface has been added to the pilot list. Let's come back in here though, because what we can now do is go and review the pilot registrations. So if you click on the name of the pilot, it gives you all of the details of that pilot and all of the form fields, as well as links to all the files. So we can see exactly what the documents are, and you can save those. A couple of other things to highlight here. You can also review them. So if you decide this is all good, you can approve it. And I would say, yep, Andrew's paid, and you can add comments that will just be for internal use if you wish. And I can click update. That's now updated. If I come back to the form, we can see it's now been reviewed, and that's all good. So Andrew's good. If you decide that Balloony McBloomface hasn't filled out enough information, you can reject it. So you can actually say reject, hit update. That will then allow Balloony McBloomface to go back in and change his registration form. Okay, now a couple of other things you can do in here. So if you want to add, if you have a lot of pilots and you just want to add them all to your pilot list in one hit, this will allow you to do that. So you can click on that link, and anyone who's not already in the pilot list will be added. You're able to export the registrations into a CSV or basically an Excel file. So if you want to download all of the data about what the pilots have done, you can do that by clicking this link and generate the file. And then what that will give you is a spreadsheet that contains all of the information that they have provided. Okay, what you're also able to do is when you go into each of these pilots, you can see that we also have some other options here. You can print the registration, and so that just gives you a print-friendly version. So when you actually print that, it will look nice and be easy to read. You can also download a zip file of all the files that pilot has uploaded. So you can click on there, click on Generate File, and then that will create you a zip file that you can download. And when you open that up, we can see that it has all of the files that pilot's uploaded. So you're able to get all the information and take it offline. So there you go. There's the WatchMeFly event registration system. Feel free to reach out to us at info@watchmefly.net if you require any help setting up your event registration forms. Thank you and have a great day.